Hilaire Belloc wrote of the awful loneliness of this world, which is like the cold space that exists between planets. And this album explores that space in this haunting collection of songs. But is it any good? Let's find out, shall we? Welcome classic rock fans to an episode of New Album Review, and today we're looking at a not so new album by Ebony Buckle called Disco Lasers. Disco Lasers is a beguiling and original album that's imbued with these gentle, gossamer-like sounds and airy voices. It's a bit like a lullaby. And the arrangements are generally moving, drawn from the mythos of the universe. I presume suggesting that there is some meaning and purpose behind its vastness. Or maybe not. It certainly draws upon symbolism and has a very storybook quality, as these songs are arranged beautifully to kind of explore these narratives of loneliness and loss. And we're beguiled with symbols of whales and planets and stars and love lost or love torn off unused, as the poet Philip Larkin said. It's an extraordinary album that overall is more than the sum of its parts, shall we say, this oceanic swell of sound. It certainly seems to embrace a singular mood, almost as if Ebony Buckle had maxed out on pet sounds before she wrote this one. I have to say it's one of the most beautiful and evocative albums I've heard this year. Jean-Paul Sartre said life begins on the other side of despair, and this album takes us on that journey. This narratives of loneliness and abandonment, all inherent amid the mysticism and motifs that this record explores. Ebony Buckle is a London-based performer who's originally from Australia, I believe, no doubt moved here for the gorgeous climate and weather. And she performs rights with her husband, Nick Burns, who also produces her music, if I'm not mistaken. This album perfectly mirrors her own inner self and the vast universe around her, on songs that deal with this need for connection. These little individual narratives deal with rather intriguing cases of disconnection. This album explores the very nature of our existence, how small we really are in the whole vastness of the universe. Ebony Buckle says that the album as a whole is very atmospheric, almost cinematic. Each song is arranged to tell a specific story. Her voice is intriguing and ethereal as we almost drift away in this narcotized state, this mythos that she creates with these stories. She pauses, the music pauses, it's like this sonic caesura. An exhalation, a moment to take stock for the listener, and her use of space and these little glimpses of silence add to the landscape that is this record. There is a deep emotional ache to many of these songs, a sense of loss, yet also a sense of transcendent beauty. Maybe you can't have one without the other. I think Lou Reed famously said that magic and loss kind of even things out. In life, certainly, but on this album there seems to be a greater emphasis on the magic with symbols of whales and stars. The whales are associated with compassion and solitude. In fact, I read somewhere that there is a traditional Hawaiian chant that teaches that whales are part of both darkness and light, divine and physical. And this album is all about the light and shade of such symbols. And Kate Bush also understood this. In fact, she uses whale song in the opening track of her wonderful debut album. She was certainly aware of the symbolic potency attendant upon these eerie, blubbery calls from the deep. And the music is full of surprises, full of crescendos and dips. It's a very dynamic and emotive listening experience. I love the video to Ghosts. Actually, I saw that where she mooches about an empty apartment. The ghosts could be symbolic or literal, perhaps a metaphor for loneliness. It's a song that's not on this album, by the way, but nevertheless it's certainly intriguing. It has something of the man with the child in his eyes, if you'll forgive the Kate Bush reference once more. I love the line in this song that she talks of keeping hope in a jar, which instantly makes us think of how Eleanor Rigby kept her face in the jar in the hope of her moment of recognition, a moment in the sun, perhaps. Nevertheless, the theme of loneliness is apparent in the need for connection. Norman Cousins said, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside us while we live." This is not a concept album, or if it is, it's a very loose concept album, a collection of these little narratives which have this overarching mood or atmosphere that's explored. You might view that as a concept album, but I suppose it comes down to how broad one's definition is. There is no overarching narrative, just these beautiful, heartfelt numbers that an abstract yearning. We're taking on an emotional journey which reaches a kind of denouement, I think, as the final notes of this record cease to vibrate. So the thing about the songs on this album, the first track is Wonder, which begins with this hymnal swell of church organ as Ebony's voice almost soars above it in many respects. A bit like whale song, maybe. And this song is actually based on the story of the 52 Hertz whale, sometimes known as the loneliest whale in the world. The whale in question was discovered in the 1980s, and it was assumed that it was singing at a frequency where it could not be heard by any of the other whales, therefore becoming a beautiful symbol of isolation, an image that's imbued with pathos, really, as it just floats amid the hypnotic and dreamlike world of this number. You could argue that it's a hazy and wistful paean to otherness. One critic has written, the heavenly instrumentation and hypnotic vocals create a kaleidoscope of delirium. The whale becomes an interdeterminal traveller that drifts further and further away. The Planet Who Believed is an interesting number about perception, about the discovery of gas clouds in outer space that were behaving like stars. Stars that just don't know their place. It was a song written after Ebony Buckle read an article in New Scientist. She explains, I think so many of us find ourselves in a situation we thought we had understood, only to find out it is vastly different and very much out of our control. Who Remembers begins with this very serene falsetto vocals, echoing the tranquil instrumentation that's used. The song starts with actual NASA audio recording of a storm on Jupiter. It's a number about an alien invasion that left the planet depleted of life, with the exception of one survivor pleading for help. Selkie is another interesting one drawn from the mythology. It begins with this vocal refrain that just tumbles with the music, almost like rolling waves. This is essentially a love song about a mortal and a sea spirit. I think Selkie comes from Celtic and Arctic Inuit folklore. Beautiful blend of voices here. You get this impression of this naive young woman that has been, imprisoned somehow, I think. And we get this vast chorus as the Selkie returns to the ocean. Immortal is an interesting number that deals very much with what it's like to be godlike. Looking down on the mountains I forged, and this blessing or curse of immortality. The song has a grandeur and gesture amid its somber tones. The thump of the drums ring out like some celestial decree, and like many of these numbers it speaks of yearning and loss, really. As Buckle confessed, as a child I was obsessed with Greek and Roman mythology, and so this must have crept into my subconscious somehow. It's rather tragic and melodramatic. It tells the story of an immortal soldier who falls in love with a mortal man only to have them torn away from her by the other gods. Wild Woman has this gorgeous a cappella vocal, which is a kind of petitioning, a call for the authentic self. I was actually inspired by a quote from Women Who Run With Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. You took your time seems to be very much about the lost one's identity and individuality. It explores the quest to find oneself, and the strings here are used beautifully and enigmatically. One commentator has noted that the track delves into new spheres of spirituality and questioning of our place on earth. Certainly the ethereal chorus rings out like almost creates this questioning. Little Stars is this atmospheric lullaby, this haunting number that deals with the idea of self-discovery. The music video begins with a close-up of Buckle and gradually pans out to the gentle hum of the piano, all beautifully illustrating this shift in perspective. Disco Lasers is a beautiful number, essentially about, seems to be about motherhood and the fears attendant upon. I would argue about parenthood as well, having children myself. I won't be brave enough to hold you near, she says in the song, this is my fear. This explores, I think, the pressures surrounding the responsibility for another life. I love the line in this song, they're sending disco lasers into outer space to find a better future for the human race. Beautifully evocative, speaking of that sense of warmth, wonder, and fear, I think, that comes with parenthood. That kick inside. Thank You Goodbye is the final track on the album that bids us to break free of all that holds us back, I think. even that which is within us. As I said at the start of this video, this is a beautiful and evocative album that warrants your attention, but I shall leave it there. And I will end this video by saying I hope you're all well and safe and healthy, but more important than all these things is that you keep listening.